Hey Alex, I was reading an intriguing interview with Francis Collins where he discusses why it's difficult for scientists to believe in a higher power. Have you come across this?
Yes, I'm familiar with it. Collins presents a balanced view of the apparent conflict between science and religion. It's a topic that has sparked debates for centuries. What caught your attention?
The idea that scientists see religion as a threat to the scientific method. Collins suggests that faith and science ask different questions. Can you elaborate on that?
Absolutely. Science is fundamentally about understanding the natural world through empirical evidence and testable hypotheses. It's a rigorous method designed to answer how questions. How does this process work? How do certain phenomena occur? And so on. Religion, on the other hand, often addresses why questions. Why do we exist? What is the purpose of life? Is there a higher power?
So it's not that science and religion are inherently at odds, but rather they operate in different domains?
Precisely. Science doesn't necessarily have the tools to answer metaphysical or philosophical questions that religion tackles. For instance, science can explain the mechanisms behind the Big Bang, but it doesn't address why the universe exists in the first place. That's where religion and philosophy might come in.
Collins mentions that many scientists find it hard to integrate faith into their worldview because they see it as a threat. Why is that?
For some scientists, the challenge lies in the fact that faith often requires belief in things that cannot be empirically proven. This is fundamentally different from the scientific method, which demands evidence and repeatable results. If a belief system introduces ideas that can't be tested or proven, it can feel like an affront to the rigor and reliability that science values. Unfortunately, extreme voices tend to dominate public discussions because conflict is more attention-grabbing than harmony. On one side, you have religious fundamentalists who may reject scientific findings that contradict their beliefs. On the other side, there are scientists who use science as a tool to dismiss any belief that isn't grounded in empirical evidence. These extremes overshadow the more moderate views that seek a middle ground, where science and faith can coexist.
That makes sense. But Collins also suggests that the conflict is amplified by extremists on both sides. Those who are dogmatic in their religious beliefs and those who are staunchly atheistic. How does that play into the broader discourse?
Exactly. The majority of people, including many scientists, might actually be comfortable with the idea that science is a powerful tool for understanding the natural world, but it doesn't provide all the answers. There's a space for faith, philosophy, and theology to address the questions that science doesn't cover.
It's almost as if the real conversation, the nuanced one, is getting lost. Collins also touches on the idea that studying genetics and evolution can actually enhance one's sense of wonder and belief in a higher power. Isn't that counterintuitive, given that evolution is often seen as a challenge to religious explanations of life?
It might seem counterintuitive at first, but Collins makes an interesting point. Understanding the complexity of genetics and the elegance of evolution can actually deepen one's appreciation for the idea of a higher power. For him, the process of evolution, guided by natural selection, answers the how of life's diversity, but it still leaves room for the why. The intricacies of the genetic code and the improbability of certain constants in the universe can evoke a sense of awe that some might interpret as evidence of a guiding intelligence.
So, in a way, scientific discoveries don't necessarily diminish belief in God. They can actually inspire it?
For some, yes. Collins, for instance, sees the fine-tuning of the universe's constants as something that could suggest a higher intelligence. But he's also careful to separate this from the idea of a deity that intervenes in natural processes. He's open to the possibility that the laws of nature themselves could be the product of a mind, but once those laws are in place, science explains how the universe operates.
It's fascinating how he navigates both realms without feeling the need to compromise his scientific integrity or his faith.
That's one of the key takeaways from his perspective. He's advocating for a viewpoint where science and faith are not mutually exclusive but are different ways of exploring reality. This approach, however, requires a willingness to embrace uncertainty and accept that not all questions can be answered by science alone.
Do you think this viewpoint is common among scientists, or is it more of an exception?
It's more common than the public discourse might suggest. Many scientists who hold religious beliefs do so in a way that doesn't conflict with their scientific work. They compartmentalize the two, seeing science as the best tool for understanding the natural world, while faith addresses their spiritual or existential concerns. However, those who are more vocal about their atheism or religious skepticism tend to dominate the conversation, making it seem like a larger rift exists than actually does.
I can see how that might create a skewed perception. It's like the middle ground is overshadowed by the louder voices at the extremes.
Exactly. And this polarization isn't just limited to science and religion. It's a broader issue in many areas of public discourse today. But when it comes to science and faith, there's a rich tradition of thinkers who have managed to find harmony between the two, even if they don't always get as much attention.
I guess that's why Colin's perspective is so refreshing. He's not trying to force a resolution, but rather he's comfortable with the idea that science and faith address different aspects of our experience.
That's a good way to put it. He's comfortable with the tension between the two, and he sees it as a natural part of the human quest for understanding. It's a viewpoint that acknowledges the strengths and limits of both science and faith, without demanding that one must invalidate the other.
It's a nuanced perspective for sure. But do you think this balance is sustainable, especially in a world where scientific advancements are constantly pushing the boundaries of what we know?
It's definitely challenging. As science continues to advance, it will likely keep raising new questions and challenges for religious belief systems. But at the same time, those advancements might also continue to inspire wonder and raise deeper philosophical questions that science alone can't answer. The key is maintaining a dialogue where both perspectives can coexist and inform each other.
That seems like a difficult balance to maintain, especially as both fields evolve.
It is, but it's not impossible. It requires open-mindedness and a recognition that both science and religion, in their own ways, are seeking truth. They just approach it from different angles. As long as there's respect for the integrity of each approach, there's room for both in the broader search for meaning and understanding.
That's a hopeful outlook. I suppose it also depends on individual scientists and how they choose to reconcile, or not reconcile, their work with their beliefs.
Indeed, it's a deeply personal journey for each scientist. Some find a way to integrate their faith with their scientific work seamlessly, while others may struggle with the tension between the two. Ultimately, it comes down to how one interprets the boundaries and intersections between science and faith.
Do you think the scientific community is becoming more open to these kinds of discussions, or is the divide still growing?
There's definitely a growing awareness of the need for these discussions, especially as interdisciplinary studies and the philosophy of science gain more attention. While there's still a divide, I think the conversation is evolving. More scientists are exploring these questions openly, and there's a gradual shift toward acknowledging that science doesn't have to be in conflict with religion, as long as both are understood in their proper contexts.
It's reassuring to know that there's still room for dialogue, even if the answers aren't always clear-cut.
Absolutely. The ambiguity is part of the journey. In the end, both science and religion offer unique insights into the nature of existence. The challenge, and the beauty, lies in navigating the space where they intersect and diverge.
Thanks for breaking this down, Alex. It's given me a lot to think about.
Anytime, Sophia. These are the kinds of discussions that push us to think more deeply about the world and our place in it.
I couldn't agree more.
And remember, it's not about finding all the answers, but about continuing to ask meaningful questions.
Well said. Here's to more questions.